This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento today, and we are joined by Tony Mendoza. He is a member of the California State Senate. And recently, sir, there was a family in your district that suffered an immense tragedy. In Whittier, California, a young man named Paul Lee lost his life needlessly. Tell us about Paul and what happened.
Well, it was an unfortunate incident. It happened late last year. Where Paul Lee, who happened to be a special education student, who was left behind in a school bus by the driver, who failed to go to the rear of the bus to make sure that all the students had left the bus. And it was one of those hot days towards the end of the summer when this happened. It was actually the last day of session, right before we went home. So it was such a tragedy. It had a lot of ripple effects in our community. Many parents were upset. The disability community was very upset because these students like that need a lot of extra attention.
We hear often about babies left in car seats, and it gets very hot. You know, there's discussion about alarms for those types of car seats or otherwise. But there apparently, and I'm talking, by the way, to an elementary school teacher, so you know from what you speak, but there apparently is a technology that would provide an alert system, and it's pretty affordable, if you ask me, sir.
Yeah, it is pretty affordable, and I think that's the rationale behind this legislation is that it is, first of all, we shouldn't be having technology to have people do their job.
I know, but
their job requires them to go to the rear of the bus.
Right.
So that's an unfortunate incident. So this bill would actually ask that the manufacturers and also the districts that have these buses or contract out to make sure that those buses are equipped with the technology to make sure that the alarm goes off if the driver fails to go to the rear of the bus.
Oh, that's how it would work.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't sense a human being. It would sense that he did not walk backward.
Right. So it would, when the shift is over or the route is over, they would have to go to the rear of the bus, turn the device off, and then leave. They physically have to go to the back and turn it off.
That makes sense, yeah. And the cost is $150, which, you know, for a life, I don't know. I mean, it's easy for me to count someone else's money, but at the same time, it does seem as if, you know, just another fail-safe measure. Right. So what are the school districts saying? What are the bus manufacturers saying?
They've been pretty quiet, as you can imagine. They're not against it or anything like that. So we're going to be working with them. I think they're going to be okay with it. I think that this bill also provides some other measures. This would also mandate that the district notify the DMV that the driver left the child behind. That's something that's not required right now. It would also require that during the safety training of these bus drivers to repeat and actually go over the fact that they have to go to the back of the bus. So they're going to go over that during their safety training.
The good news, though, is that in some ways, California would not be a groundbreaker in this because there are other states that have passed similar laws. Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, Wisconsin. So others pending legislation, Illinois, New Jersey, Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota. I mean, this is an issue that's sweeping the nation. And so, you know, we have at least a study if we look at other states.
Right. We have something to base it on. So, and we're just making it a little bit different. We're going to make sure that there's a little bit more of accountability to make sure that the drivers do what they have to do.
Look, I have no doubt that this driver had no intent for this to happen, but are there or were there ramifications for his behavior?
Thus far, no. They're actually still investigating some of the background on what had actually transpired. This company happens to be a company that was, contracted out by the district.
I see, right.
So what they do is there's a group of districts that got together, they pool their money to pay for these bus drivers or buses.
So I know that you represent significant areas of Los Angeles County, and in some of those areas there's been a lot of noise with regard to elected water districts.
Yes.
And potential conflicts of interest on a whole host of issues.
Yes.
And I understand, sir, that you're looking to try to prevent such conflicts. And I want to get a sense what you're trying to do. Again, it's one element of a whole host of elements dealing with water boards, which have become much more in the news, not only because of the drought, but because of conflicts, Central Basin otherwise. So talk to us about your proposal, SB 1011.
Well, 1011 basically says that if you're a governing board, any elected body, and you vote on water board,
school board,
city council, college board, legislature
too.
Well, anybody that's that if you're approving a contract,
right,
for any entity or any person, any company, whatever,
Right.
and the person that's a part of that contract, contract or behind that company, is a family member of yours, then you have to abstain.
And that would be offspring, siblings, spouse, parents,
Right.
and then I guess step parents.
I mean, anybody that's
Right.
immediate.
I kind of asked though, sir, we need a law on this? I mean, this seems pretty self-evident, no?
No, the law right now says that the only reason you would have to abstain is if you have a financial relationship with that person.
Okay.
That's the only reason.
But I understand what the law says. I got it. But Ethics 101.
Right.
You know, my wife, my sister, my stepfather.
Or your daughter.
Yeah, my
son,
daughter.
They come before you and they want a trash contract. They
Right.
want a babysitter contract,
Right.
whatever contract they want from that governing board, that city council. Then right now by law, you could give it to them as long as they don't live with you and they don't have a financial relationship with you.
So, but you're demanding an abstention, not a revelation of the conflict.
No, up to them, but they just have to abstain.
They do have to abstain. Because, you know, I could see you proposing, for example, you can vote, you just have to reveal your conflict.
Okay.
But you're going a step further.
Yeah, no, this is, well, for me, it just,
Right. I'm not criticizing.
I just think it's
Yeah.
it really leaves a bad perception in the public when you're voting for contracts that actually benefit family members.
So what happens if there's a violation? Is there a civil penalty for this? Is this a criminal matter?
Well, you will lose your office.
Oh, okay.
So that's why
That's a good penalty.
A lot of the elected
Yeah.
officials are very worried about that. Well, I think you know who
wait a
your
second.
children
I
are.
don't buy it.
I
Yeah.
think you know who your children are, and I know who your parents are. I think
Yeah.
you know that.
Yeah.
I think you know where they work at. I
Right.
think you know what kind of, so I find it a stretch that you will not know what you're
The
voting
thing
for.
that's shocking to me is that, you know, maybe I'm naive, but I just wouldn't want to touch it. You know, it's just like, why would I want to get involved in something like this? It's
Yeah.
only asking for scrutiny.
Yeah, it feels uncomfortable.
Right.
Very uncomfortable.
So, look, ethics reform, not always easy to pass. I don't know if you were in the body yet in the Senate, but when there were the controversies surrounding Senator Leland Yee and Senator Rod Wright and Senator whoever the last one was, Calderon, Ron Calderon, there was ethics reform, but only specific to the Senate, didn't go through the entire legislature. Do you feel as if that the mood is ripe to pass this types of ethics reform?
I would imagine that it would be, but then there's also the other side where a lot of the legislators feel uncomfortable that
Right.
there is also an attempt that they're out to get you.
Right.
And they don't want to give them even more ammunition, more fuel for the
And
fire.
look, I do think that's a fair point because, look, at a certain level, you got a tough job, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to having a difficult job, the pay is all right, and you have to raise a lot of money. And I've said this before, what Leland Yee did was reprehensible, but what I found remarkable about his bad deeds is he was not taking money to buy yachts, to buy homes, to take trips. He was taking this money for fundraising and debt retirement. I mean, it really does say a lot about the pressures that we place on our elected officials. Is that valid?
No, it's valid to a certain
Yeah.
extent, but then when you look at these kind of reforms that we're talking
Right.
about,
I mean, this is so specific.
I mean, you're like, this is really has nothing to do with you as a person. Right? They just
Right.
making sure that you do the right thing, and
Right.
not create the bad perception. That's all.
Well, what a shame is that you need to have this legislation, is that
Right.
people don't have a sense that this isn't right. Senator, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank you also for joining us. By the way, we are on Twitter. If you want to catch us, just go on to my Twitter handle, @Brad Pomerance. He's at Senator...
Mr. Tony
Oh,
Mendoza.
right, I knew that, Mr. Tony Mendoza. My name is Brad Pomerance in Sacramento. This is Local Edition.